Alrighty, welcome back to an episode of Two Point Sports. Today is Wednesday, November 22nd. I bet some of you are pretty excited to see this title with an actual recruiting video. We've been slacking a little bit on this content just because the 2024 class has been pretty much wrapped up since, I don't know, August or early
Yep.
to mid-September. And it's just been kind of a little bit of back and forth with a few recruits. So we thought, it's about that time. We probably need to start putting out a little bit more content, and there's a little bit something to talk about. So we're going to be talking offensive line recruiting. I think that's a hot topic that a lot of people are concerned about, and with the way that the offensive line has played this year, there's some questions. So before we talk about that, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn the notification bell on, follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Apple, Spotify, and TikTok. Everything's linked in the description below. And we go live every Tuesday night, 8:30 p.m. Central. So be sure to be one of the new people. I think what were we, 83 people away from 6,100. So be one of those 83. Join the club. It's easy and free. So before we start talking offensive line recruiting, it seems like there'll be a couple recruits in town. Michael Patterson McDonald and David Stone, the 2024 five-star defensive lineman David Stone will be in town. It seems like he's home for Thanksgiving break, and it's an easy drive for him to go up to Norman and be there and recruit anyone that they might have on campus. Obviously, when you get the five-star on campus, any given point, it does not hurt your chances at all. And it seems like he is totally bought in and is there to do some peer-to-peer recruiting with whoever Oklahoma has. So that's just something to mention. Do you have any thoughts on that?
And I wonder if IMG makes them go back for the rest of the season. Because I think their football year is done. Probably will have 2-3 weeks left in the school year. Take his finals. He's going to be an early enrollee to Oklahoma. And maybe let the kid stay in Oklahoma. Take some online class. Finish the rest online. So he didn't have to travel back. Yeah, I just thought I'm curious if that is how IMG handles that. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's more than him and Michael. The rest of probably all of the 2025 class. They're all an hour from Oklahoma, from OU. So I'm sure there's going to be a little bit of a couple handfuls of guys there checking out the game, seeing the last one for the year, the day after Thanksgiving. Kind of enjoy their long weekend.
Yeah, no, that's true. I'm gonna be curious. I'll be curious to be watching that, keeping close tabs on that. So let's talk offensive line recruiting. I think the first guy to talk, and I think it's probably the longest conversation we're going to have or topic on this episode is Grant Bree, as I like to say, or Grant Bricks. Grant Bricks has been teetering back and forth for the longest time, it seems, between Oklahoma and Nebraska. It depends on the week, throughout the past, 6-8 months, where he was going to go, whether it was going to be Oklahoma or Nebraska. You felt like multiple times he could have been Nebraska, multiple times could have been Oklahoma. And finally, there's been crystal balls put in for Nebraska, or some have been flipped to Nebraska. And that seems awfully evident. His original plans were to do one final round of visits, Nebraska first, Oklahoma second, and then K-State was supposed to get a visit this weekend. K-State, I think, is out of the picture. He made it to both Oklahoma and Nebraska, and it seemed like the visit went well, but it seems like every visit went well with Bricks, and ultimately, obviously, something changed. Someone made a decision, or someone's telling all the national recruiting analysts and things like that it's Nebraska, and I'm personally just glad that this is pretty much over. But we talked about it a little bit on the live stream. It just seems like the few years we've been doing this, when there's a little bit of a hang up, when it seems like it's all green lights, to commit, and it makes total sense, but there's just something holding them back. It's just in their gut, and it's just something that's holding them back. And when that something is just a little bit, it normally festers into something bigger, because something's obviously was bothering him and he wanted to be closer to home. What do you think?
Yeah, I think you hit it on the nail there. This wasn't maybe as drama filled or exciting as the Peyton Bowen saga, or even the David Stone one, because David Stone kept putting out different dates, and it ended up being just different lists and cutting it down to X amount of schools until the day he decided, made his commitment at one of his football games. But with Grant Bricks, it has been and we talked about it on the live stream. It seemed like it had been looking for a reason to not commit to Oklahoma because every school, he had visited every school a lot of times. You kind of know what each school is going to offer you. You've been to campus, you've seen what it's like. He went to a game day at Nebraska and at Oklahoma. You got an idea after those. Seemingly, those are really the two schools that were really in this race. And, being closer to home, probably going to be something that's very valuable to him and his family. And we'll see what happens with that program and Matt Rule, and assuming he joins that class come signing day, and where his career ends up being like that. At the end of the day, that this, I think it was more so not, he was scared of making the wrong decision instead of just trying to make a decision, which I think is a good approach that he took, because it is a very important decision for these kids to make at 18 years old. It's not like every other 18-year-old that just gets to pick a school and you'll get your degree. It's important, the kind of program that they have. But this one, if you go to the wrong coach, if you go to a program that loses a lot, your NFL hopes go from, an offensive lineman at Oklahoma, for example. I think the possibility of going to the NFL is high as long as you're performing at Oklahoma. Versus in recent history at Nebraska, it hasn't been the same. You really have to be a big standout to get to that level, and he definitely can be. But you gotta, maybe I think he needed to be sold that Matt Rule was the guy, and that staff were the people to help get him there. And it seems like ever since that semi truck was parked in front of his high school, that left a lasting enough impression that when he got to campus, they really showed that he was their number one guy. There was nothing more important than getting Grant Bricks with this 2024 recruiting class. He is their version of our David Stone. And that also is probably going to be a huge impact to him and his family. Like, I'm their guy. I am number one above everyone else. Just like David Stone and Williams and Ray were for Oklahoma. Not that Oklahoma doesn't do a good job at showing that the other kids are prioritized, but it's to that level of importance it seemed like Grant Bricks was to Nebraska.
He's definitely like a cornerstone type player for them, and I can't blame him because he would be a cornerstone in our recruiting class as well. But it's even more so magnifying with Matt Rule when you're going against Oklahoma. He lost out on Walter Rouse last year in the transfer portal, and you're looking to get a big win against a big program, and you're a rival, historical rival, and the fact that Matt Rule, it appears that he's going to be able to do this is big time for them. And I'm not going to act like it's because Oklahoma backed off of them or Oklahoma doesn't want Grant Bricks. Of course they want him, but I mean at the end of the day, he had to make the decision for himself, and he ultimately did. Some kind of a guy that kind of similar skill, similar player to me is a guy like Turner. Do you remember Turner? Gosh, what's his name? Turner Corcoran. I think that's how you say Corcoran. He was in the 2020 class. He was a 4-star offensive lineman. It was between Oklahoma and Texas with him. He was the number 68 player in their class, number 6 offensive tackle, and it was OU or Nebraska. And unfortunately, I mean, he's out of Lawrence, Kansas. He picked Nebraska. It seems like that this is a similar guy. I mean, they're both offensive tackles, both high-rated 4 stars, and Oklahoma just couldn't get over the hump. And it's kind of like this is Nebraska's next big win, in the last 3 years against Oklahoma. So it is what it is. I'm glad we just have an answer at this point. And man, at the end of the day, if he didn't feel at home right now, I'd rather him make the decision now to go elsewhere where he wanted to be, because even if he would have picked Oklahoma, signed with Oklahoma, and he was here next year, he probably would have been a portal candidate just because he might not have really, truly been all in. And not just because Oklahoma didn't want him or whatever. Not every personality fits in. And That's fair, and I respect if it doesn't feel like home, there's no point in just trying to put a what is it, a square peg in a round hole. Just you got to go where you feel most comfortable, and for him, it seems to be Nebraska, and it is what
And
it is.
it probably works out for him in the long run. Like I'm thinking of like last year's class, 2022 group. Or sorry, the 2023 group. Derek LeBlanc, I think is a good example.
Yeah,
Like he came in or early enrollee, and I think we were all excited about how what he could have been at Oklahoma, and then before season started, he ended up transferring to UCF. I think it was because he needed to be closer to home. And obviously, being close to home is something that Bricks and his family value. So there's no reason to force himself out of if that's not a comfort. If getting outside of that comfort zone is something he can do or sees himself doing, it's better for him to be able to focus and be comfortable closer to home than trying to be uncomfortable in a place where he might be more successful but is going to want to leave every other weekend to go see his family.
yeah. I mean, exactly. I mean, we were all excited for Derek LeBlanc, and I mean, we saw how that panned out. So, what difference does it make if he doesn't? He would be gone from the program most likely, if and it is what it is. So, talking about another guy that's been rumored and stuff is 2024 five-star offensive tackle Jordan Seaton. There was a scheduled official visit at one point with Oklahoma. Was up on his top 8 or whatever it was at one point. Seemed like Oklahoma had some momentum coming from the IMG Academy. He then chose to go on unofficial rather than Oklahoma's official visit to Tennessee. And then there were rumors flying around that potentially David Stone could convince Seaton to come out for a visit to Oklahoma. But recently, in the last few days, Seaton dropped a top 7 of Tennessee, Oregon, Colorado, Florida, Alabama, Maryland, and Ohio State. Oklahoma's off that list. I think we can put this to bed. I think Oklahoma can kind of close that book as well and not worry about that. Do you have any thoughts on that? I mean, it's not shocking. It always felt like that was like a far fetched deal.
It was a high. It seemingly was a highest bidder situation, which is fine. Like NIL, love it or hate it, is a component that families, these kids, and schools have to be aware about, and get compensated the way they feel is fit. And some schools will pay more than others, for good or bad. Now, I don't really think this is a huge loss for Oklahoma. If he was that quick to cancel those visits and not really reschedule, OU clearly wasn't as high on that board as was originally reported. And again, it's kind of like Grant Bricks, not to that same extent where Bricks really seemed to be considering Oklahoma because of the possibility and how good Coach B develops. It's Seaton who just I think was interested in the brand and what it could have done for him. And yeah, the NFL development's definitely important to these kids because they want to get to the NFL. But those other schools put guys in the NFL too. It's not like he won't get drafted if he goes to Ohio State or something. He will. He just has to perform at a high level because Ohio State has those expectations, probably a little bit higher than Oklahoma. Like it or not, it's national championship or bust for Ohio State right now. For Oklahoma, you still have the wiggle room of can they make it to now to the college football playoffs and be competitive in that format come next year.
Yeah. And the last topic is where does Oklahoma go in this 2024 offensive line recruiting? There is one name in Tyler Mercer, the current Tulane commit out of Prosper, Texas, so that North Texas area. He is a legacy for Oklahoma. He visited for the OU West Virginia game a couple weeks ago. He still is committed to Tulane. He has a preferred walk-on offer for him, so he doesn't have a full scholarship offer, but I would imagine that Oklahoma would be able to compensate with NIL to basically make it a regular scholarship offer for him, in a roundabout way. But there really hasn't been any movement with Mercer, and I can't blame him. I mean, Tulane is playing well. He's got a full scholarship offer there. Tulane, if this year was to end the way it is and we're in the 12-team format, they're in the college football playoffs. and there's an opportunity to really play at Tulane, and there might not be. There's going to be a lot stiffer competition at Oklahoma for him to see the field. So I don't necessarily blame him for not moving quickly, but I do wonder, and I think he's playing it smart, just think about it from him personally. The longer he waits this out, and potentially a transfer portal candidate, that leaves Oklahoma's offensive line and the guys that graduated and the guys that could go to the NFL, Oklahoma might become a little bit more desperate or have a scholarship open that they might be able to extend to him. And I think if Oklahoma extends a full scholarship to him, I think he will jump on board at that point. So I don't blame him the way he's playing it. I just think that this is not going to end until February, and also the way that Oklahoma does in the transfer portal. If Oklahoma strikes out in the transfer portal, I think he gets a full scholarship offer. I really think Oklahoma's just holding this, kind of holding steady right now to see what happens as far as their team and who they can get in the portal, and at that point reevaluate after Christmas.
Yeah, and this class is already at 28 scholarship players in the 24 class. I think at this point you just give those scholarships to those guys that are for sure takes. Like, I know probably got pipe dreams at this point, but like Williams Neri, if he decided to change his mind and go back to and go to Oklahoma as it was originally expected, that's not a guy that they'll turn down. Um, Bryant Wesco, Sammy Brown, like those guys that are like extreme talents that just need to be, maybe integrated into a defense or an offense and given the opportunity to play. Rather, Tyler Mercer seems to be someone that might need a little bit more development. He has a bigger body, so I think this classes of offensive linemen so far are bigger bodies than it was in the 2023 class, so they do have that going for them. But you did bring in a group of 4 offensive linemen in the 2023 class, so you're not lacking depth, you're lacking experience going into next fall and next football season. That's probably, and some people clearly are not fans of that right now with the fallout of Bricks not being a part of this class as currently expected, or Eddie Pierre-Louis as currently expected not being part of this 2024 class. People are starting to question, can Coach B recruit? I am of the mindset that the offensive line rankings are basically how big are you and not how your technique looks. And I'm not here to say that I know what a good offensive line technique looks like, but I think it's someone that has to be very, very specialized and probably former offensive linemen that know if it's a good or a bad or someone that can be developed and where those little things can get improved. Because when you're in high school and you're 6'5", 320 pounds, more than likely just going to be able to outpower everyone that you play against. And that will help your ranking a lot more than, you're not going to be able to do that so much at the collegiate level because guys are bigger, stronger, older than you, have been in the weight room for a long time. You won't be able to just outpower someone more than likely. There's always those guys that are just massive human beings that are 18-year-old, or that are adult human beings at the age of 18 physically, but that's not everyone. So I think Coach B has shown that he develops talent regardless of how they're ranked. As fans like it or not, that is the situation not at hand. And it's not like he loses on every highly touted offensive lineman. Caden Green was a top 100 player and is now an impact freshman in this year's class. Did he get that guy in the 2024 class? No. But he's pulled 5-star offensive linemen in the past. They didn't work out. Ray Walker, right? That was the kid's name. 5-star offensive lineman. He didn't work out. That just, happens sometimes. I think it's better to see him develop guys that weren't highly touted than just bring in 5 stars and hope that their raw talents translate to performance.
Yeah, and I mean, and Coach B got Eugene Brooks. He has gone up in the rankings. I mean, he's 6'4", 320. He's the number 175 overall player according to 247's composite. He's talented. So, I mean, really, where Oklahoma goes from here, I think it's a holding pattern. We're going to see what happens in the transfer portal. I'd imagine they're going to try to take another maybe 2 players, give or take, and try to add some of that experience into their depth. And I think Oklahoma will be fine. It obviously is less than ideal. Grant Bricks would have been a nice late addition to this class, but it is what it is, and things you don't get them all. So I don't have anything else. Do you have any final thoughts? Any video challenge?
And the video challenge this week is, how concerned are you really about offensive line recruiting? Is it just because they're rating, or do you really think Coach B isn't the guy that can put out a good offensive line anymore?
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm sure there are going to be some strong opinions. So, if you made it this far, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, turn the notification bell on so you know when we go live and post videos. We go live every Tuesday night, 8:30 p.m. Central. And follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Apple, Spotify, and TikTok. Everything's linked in the description below. Catch you guys next time.